Hi there, welcome back to Football-Oranje. It's time for a match preview of Norway versus the Netherlands, a crucial World Cup qualifier potentially for the Dutch, as Louis van Gaal comes back in for his first game in charge and his third stint as manager. It's going to be entertaining, you know that, with Van Gaal in charge, and we've got some more entertainment and lead-up for you tonight. So we have here Lars Sivertsen, who is a Norwegian guy who knows a lot about football. Lars, would you like to introduce yourself?
I thought that was a good intro. Can we just leave it at that? I'm very fortunate in that I get to write and broadcast about football for a living. I've been doing that for a good 10 years now, I'd say. I was born in Norway. I've lived in England for a good while now. I'm not sure what else. I mean, you may have come across my work on the internet for various publications. Odds are, if I have to take a stab in the dark, if you're watching or listening to this, you might have heard me on the Guardian's football podcast, or possibly on the Continent, or possibly on the Trans Europe Express on TalkSport. That's the most likely place you've been exposed to my work before.
We've always heard you and seen you around the internet, Lars, and we had to get you on because you're a great guy, but also you know a lot about Norway. And the Dutch football fans are fearing that this first match in charge for Van Gaal, he's not had very long at all to prepare for this. He also hasn't had very much time with his players when he gets to them on Monday. He's actually had a couple of days. Cute dog.
Well, I'm sorry, she's getting really annoying now. She was fine. Right as we were preparing to go on, she was chilled out in the sitting room, and now she's making an ass of herself. Come on. Fine. Come on. Settle down.
The big man though is Virgil van Dijk, and that is going to be massive for the Dutch. But when you look at what Norway have got, they're a different proposition nowadays. And I'm starting to think that this could be, with the likes of Haaland, of course, like the big introduction of Norway on the international stage. All at the wrong time, of course, for the Dutch.
So there are kind of two separate strands here as far as Norwegian football is concerned right now. Because on the one hand, yes, we are obviously super excited about the rise and continuing rise of Erling Haaland. I think it's exciting for us that Gaal has left Real Madrid and gone to a club where he'll be playing regularly, presumably, though probably not in a midfield two away to Manchester City. I think that might be something we shouldn't see again ever, and probably never see ever again. And of course, there are other exciting names. Alex Sørloth had a mixed season with RB Leipzig, but he is an exciting player. Svalgia has done well at times for Sheffield United. There are a lot of exciting names. But that's one thing, and as you might know, being a follower of Dutch football, having a lot of good names on paper doesn't always translate into a good national team. And this has been an issue so far. We've recently changed coach to Ståle Solbakken, who I like a lot, former FC Copenhagen manager. He's mentioned, obviously, Louis van Gaal has had no time at all to work with the squad, but actually Ståle Solbakken hasn't had a lot of time either because of the compressed schedule and everything because of COVID. So we've had a few games under him, which haven't been very good, and we're still yet to see that work very well. And I think there's some uncertainty. Yes, there are some big headline names in the team right now and some exciting names, but there are also some kind of glaring holes in the squad and positions where we're kind of not very well set. And there's a real sense that Ståle Solbakken, who again, I reiterate, I like him. I think he'll do well eventually as a national team manager, that he hasn't quite found the team yet and found the system yet, because we really haven't been very good in the last couple of games. So I understand why you, from the perspective of the Dutch, look at Erling Haaland and the lads and think, oh God, this could be bad. But I would also direct you to our last couple of games where we have been pretty terrible.
When we look at the squad, there are also some glaring names missing from the team of players that have played in the Eredivisie or do. And we know that they're good players. For example, Frederick Mitsio, a very good RZ Alkmaar midfielder, hasn't been selected. And it just shows perhaps how far Norway have come so far. They've still got some way to go, of course, to where they want to be with the players at their disposal now. But how do you find the squad?
So Mitchell was in Solbakken's first squad, if I recall correctly, and I think he even started the first game. But I think his trouble is he plays in one of the positions where we have quite a few options at the moment in sort of central midfield. In fact, in a recent friendly against Greece, we started in a sort of 4-4-1-1 with Odegaard as number 10 and basically 4 central midfielders. And so, I mean, we have a lot of sort of guys centrally. But you're right. I think in terms of Dutch interest, I mean, Jürgen Stonlassen of Groningen, I think quite a few people were surprised that he wasn't included as a sort of backup forward for this one. Erik Botheim of Bodø Glimt from the domestic league was called up instead. I think some people feel that Stonlassen should perhaps be ahead of him because he's done quite well for Groningen.
Yeah. He's on the bench quite a bit at the moment, though, but he's a potential player that could cause some damage. He's just a very different kind of striker, isn't he? But you've also got players like Svensson, who has been a regular for RZ for many years and hasn't even been called into the squad.
No. So there are some options here. I think looking at, I mean, if we're going to look at sort of strengths and weaknesses with Norway, after Ståle Solbakken took over, he's tried a couple of different things, but I think he really wants to play with 2 strikers, which does make sense when you have Erling Haaland and Alex Sørloth as what I've jokingly referred to as the big man combo, because I mean they're both very big men, but they're actually a very logical strike partnership because Haaland, as much as he's a big unit, he's someone who really loves to attack space and sort of run in behind, whereas Alex Sørloth is much more of a back to goal guy, much happier coming a bit short, and so they complement each other quite well. But if you want to play with 2 strikers, I mean, the thing he's been trying to do, Solbakken, is play in a 4-4-2, but that leaves you with the issue of where Martin Ødegaard plays, because he's not a typical wide player in a 4-4-2. And recently in a friendly, we tried him as a central midfielder in a 4-4-2, and that wasn't very good either. So there are some issues in terms of fitting everyone in. The other thing is centre halves are a bit of an issue. I mean, Christophe Ajer of Brentford, I'm sure a lot of people formerly of Celtic, a lot of people will have heard of. He hasn't always convinced internationally. Now, I'm sure he will mature into a very, very good defender. But there was a sense that he'd picked up some bad habits playing for Celtic, and that he'd been maybe a little bit in his comfort zone up there. And Ståle Solbakken, the coach, has been very clear that he wanted Ajer to move to a bigger league. That's happened now. He's moved to Brentford. I think that a challenge would stand him in good stead. But he's someone who hasn't always really played as well as we know or certainly think he could do for Norway. And in terms of who plays next to him in defense, that's been a little bit iffy. I think it might be Stefan Stonberg, who plays for Salernitana in Serie A now, who's had a bit of a journeyman career, but certainly something that you might historically think of as an area where Norway are strong. You'd think of us being a country that produces a long line of rugged center halves. That's a genuine issue right now in terms of how we solve that in the squad.
That sounds very promising for Dutch fans then, and especially with the way they love to get the ball on the ground and be very technical with the style that they have at the moment, with the players that they have at their disposal. It is very much trying to be quick, technical, break down the opposition, and the quality of players such as Memphis Depay gets you goals. I wonder how Louis van Gaal will twist that in his time in charge, and how he'll get around Norway. I think the biggest thing, though, still is... We talked a lot about the weaknesses, I suppose, of Norway, but strengths, Haaland. That is the thing that I keep seeing so often on Twitter right now with Netherlands fans worrying about playing against someone like him, with Van Dijk, who's just come back from his long-term injury, and the Euro showing the weakness that they had against top-quality players. Yeah. Although the Netherlands are blessed with good centre-backs right now, there's certainly worry Norway could catch them out on Van Gaal's first game, and it might all go completely wrong.
Yeah, certainly. And Haaland is in a strange position in the sense that the expectations are so high for him now when he plays for Norway. Whereas, of course, playing for Norway is not the same as playing for Borussia Dortmund. And there have been certainly in his games, I mean, his record for Norway is still good. He scored 7 in 12 or something. But there's been a sense that he hasn't always gotten the service that he usually gets for Dortmund, and that he's gotten a little bit frustrated. But in recent games, after Ståle Solbakken took over, most of them have been against opponents where we've ended up having quite a lot of the ball and defend and attacking against a team that's sat deep. Like we played against Gibraltar, we've played against Luxembourg. And in those games, he just didn't get into a lot of those positions where he's comfortable when he can integrate into space and be that sort of in this break that we know he can be. Of course, against the Dutch, against you guys, going to be very different. I mean, we're expecting a game where you guys should have the ball almost all the time, which is paradoxically, I think suits Haaland very well, because that means when we regain the ball, we can play quick balls in behind the defense for him to run to. But certainly it's been it's not that he hasn't played well. You can see what a phenomenal little player he is when he plays for Norway as well. And I remember we had a game against Northern Ireland a while back where him and Sørloth were unbelievable together. But there have been games where you can just see he's not quite in sync with the rest of the national team yet. And the players on the national team are still trying to kind of work out exactly how to service him. And that is something going forward that I hope we find a solution to, because our most important creator is Martin Ødegaard, and obviously our best striker and potentially our best ever striker is Erling Haaland. Martin Ødegaard likes, you've seen for Arsenal, he likes playing little 1-2s, little combinations, little quick passes. You can see he's gone to sort of Spanish and Dutch school in his development. Whereas Erling Haaland wants the ball played in behind quickly. He wants it directly. As soon as we get the ball, he wants it into space so he can attack. So he wants a very different type of pass than what Martin Ødegaard's first instinct seems to be to provide. So there's been a little bit of them not being quite, certainly from where we stand looking from the outside, as they're not quite on the level yet. And that's something that we're hoping that they can figure out.
So you don't think that they'll adjust to like a 4-3-3 and have Ødegaard on the right, Haaland to the middle for something like this?
That would make sense, but Solbakken really at FC Copenhagen, where he coached for many, many years, he very, very strongly favored a sort of 4-4-2 with a sort of strong sort of zonal pressing setup. And he played like that. He tended to play like that in the big games in Europe with FC Copenhagen as well, when they played teams like Man United and in Europe. He did quite like having two strikers on the field, not because that's necessarily an attacking ploy, but because they could press the center halves and try to stop the build up as well. And I think he's very, very keen on making that work. And the frustration has been that he's been playing that sort of system, and he's been playing basically central midfielders out wide. Yeah. So we've had games where we've not had enough width and not enough going on there, because you have someone like let me see. Sorry, let me just check that. This is the peril of doing this without the possibility of editing. When a name drops off my brain, as they're prone to do, suddenly there's no way of editing. There's no way of doing it. But basically, there have been games. Morten Thorsby, I'm thinking about, of course. Morten Thorsby, the very, very good player for Sampdoria, who's now been linked for the move to Atalanta. Very hardworking, sort of used that in a kind of box-to-box role in Italy. Ranieri loved him, because he's very he does what he's told. But he's been used sometimes as a wide player in a sort of 4-4-2 for Norway, which isn't his position at all. No. And that's been a little bit frustrating to watch. So I'm very interested in seeing what the lineup is here. Basically, we're heading into this game, and from a Norwegian perspective, I'm really very, very difficult to predict what our lineup looks like.
We've been talking for a while about Norway, but we're yet to talk about the Netherlands. And this is Van Gaal's reintroduction back into the Dutch, and it hasn't stopped the optimism, of course, growing from all the fans who were looking at this game. 3 games in a week: Norway, Montenegro, and Turkey. Massive banana skins, certainly for 2 of those. But the fact there's 3 games in a week, that you could drop points against any of these sides. 3 wins out of 3 would be marvelous for the Dutch, but it hasn't stopped.
Yeah. So what's very fascinating with Van Gaal as a Dutch coach, and you will correct me if I say anything that's not completely accurate here, is that I remember from his first spell, he was quite pragmatic in how he set up the team, because Van Gaal has earned the reputation for being extremely dogmatic as a coach and has the sort of his method, and it has to be his way no matter what. But actually, when he was in charge of the national team last time out, he was happy to play 3 at the back if he had to. He was happy to have this sort of weird counter-attacking setup if that was what required, because that was the players you had. Mm-hmm. So I'm really intrigued to see how he will set you up this time.
And when you think of 2014 having 5 at the back and beating Spain 5-1, this guy can just pull things out the bag. And he's not the best manager ever, but he's certainly someone who has a magic touch. And when it's something as pivotal and crucial as qualifying for this World Cup, and there's these 3 games in a week, 2 of them so important, that he's going to do something magical. That's the hope. And fans certainly feel the same way. There's a few comments that have been coming in live, and a 3-0 win for the Netherlands, a 2-0 win for the Dutch. So suddenly all this pessimism
these are not bad predictions. I mean, even with the full weight of my Nordic bias, I have to say these are not necessarily bad predictions. I mean, I'm not going into this with a lot of confidence because I feel like as a team, we're kind of not fully there. We've looked a little bit undercooked, and like the coach is still looking for the solutions. Like the big players aren't quite familiar with each other yet. So I would expect a win for you. Now, I know that seems weird to say, given that your starting point here is that you just have a new coach and no one has any idea about anything. Whereas we've actually had a few games under our new coach, but it hasn't really gelled so far.
Well, I think it's going to be better than Frank de Boer, quite frankly. So, but anyway, he's up.
And I just in terms of the strength of the Dutch, we have a nice message. The strength of the Dutch right now is the quality centre backs they have. I think Van Gaal should play a 3-4-3. That's an interesting one. What did you make of that, Mike?
It is. I do, and I think we're going to be playing Van Dijk and De Vrij because De Ligt is suspended. De Vrij is a very good replacement, and that's the thing. There are so many great centre backs coming through the Netherlands at the minute. It's not something you would normally associate with the Dutch, and the choices that Van Gaal has had to make, he's based it. He said in his press conference around fitness, he's had to go with players that have been playing, or for example, in Van Dijk's situation, he hasn't long come back, but he's someone who's so important. Daniel Marlin hadn't played too much either. But he's played a little bit at Dortmund, and Van Gaal says he's the exception in the squad because he's actually got an individual plan for him. So it's likely we'll see Marl on the left, Memphis in the middle, and some unknown quantity on the right wing. Anyone's guess who's going to play there right now. But there is quality in attack. But the main thing is this centre-back core of the team where there's these great centre-backs. Frenkie de Jong in midfield, amongst the best midfielders in the world right now, got to be. Had a decent Euros from what we saw of him, but I think you want to see a bit more leadership from him now, especially with Wijnaldum coming towards 30 and moving on. Perhaps Frenkie de Jong's got to take on that mantle. So a game like this is crucial for him, and Louis van Gaal's got to get the best out of him, because when de Jong ticks, the whole team ticks, and they'll score 2 or 3 goals like the Netherlands fans are thinking. That's the thing that I think the Norway will find hard to stop. It'll be, if they're going to play this midfield 4, it's going to be de Jong trying to drop in things between the lines constantly. And when you've got this pace and technical ability that the Dutch have, I'm optimistic of a good result. I think 3 wins in a week is going to be tricky. But against Norway, there's definitely opportunities. It's just whether Haaland gets his way. And then there's like a 2-1 win, perhaps, from these 2 opportunities that he has. And the Dutch spurn a few opportunities themselves. That's where I haven't looked at all the comments that have come in. I'm surprised there have been so many coming in from people that are watching live. But I know that there have been quite pessimistic quite recently, even though it's been Van Gaal's first game back.
I do understand that, because the Euros were obviously disappointing. But I reiterate again, I think with us there are some real personnel issues in defense. I mean, we're lacking our first choice goalkeeper. I mean, our usual first choice goalkeeper, Rune Jarstein from Hertha Berlin, who's a very solid goalkeeper, has had a very nice career in Germany. He's out with an injury. He was hit very badly by COVID, actually. He was one of those who had it quite bad, and he developed some issues to do with that. So he's not available. And again, playing next to Christoph Reyer, most likely Stefan Slonberg, who I think has played in the second tier in Russia for a bit, and is now playing for newly promoted Salernitana, who are expected to get relegated from Serie A. Made his Serie A debut last weekend and got sent off pretty early in the game, if I'm not mistaken. So I mean, this is, when you look at the quality of the forwards you've got, I worry a little bit of our defense coming up against them. What I am, and a player I'd like to flag up for you guys, who you might not have heard of, and who I think will be playing in midfield, is Norman of Rostov in Russia, who might be on his way to the Premier League now. He's likely to sign for Norwich, the way it looks. He's someone who I've really enjoyed watching for the national team, because again, I watch a lot of football. I don't watch the Russian league much at all, so I didn't know.
I can't blame you.
I didn't know what to expect of him. He's formerly he went abroad pretty early. He went to Brighton, but wasn't really close to the first team there, and ended up being sent to Russia. And you think, okay, well, that's going to be tough for you. But he's really made a career for himself in Russia. He's really sort of reinvented himself. He's spoken in sort of interviews in Norway about how the physical preparation coach of Rostov like almost changed his life. You know, made him take football very seriously. And if you look him up on Instagram, Matthias Norman, he's well, he likes it. There are some photos of him in Dubai and this sort of thing, the sort of footballer lifestyle. He's right into that, but he's also someone who's takes his physical conditioning very seriously. But he's a midfielder who he's got a good range of passing and is unafraid of trying things, but he's got real bite to him as well. So I think when you talk about Frankie de Jong being very good, of course he's brilliant, but I can imagine young Matthias Norman bringing a reducer or two from the Russian league to bear to try to sort de Jong out. And I would imagine he should start, because I've just seen recent news now. I think this is just from today, is that Sandberg of Sheffield United have tested positive for COVID. So he should not be involved in the game, which is obviously not good for us. And he's would have been one of the first names on the team sheet, I think. And so hopefully, because I like him a lot, Matthias Norman will start and do well in his stead.
Some of the other names that are to be included in the Netherlands 11 are really unknown. Positions that have been decided for years have suddenly become very uncertain who's going to play there. Fullbacks have always been a bit of a, if you're in form, you're going to play there for the Netherlands. So at the moment, it's unsure who's going to play left back and right back, but they have been problem positions during the Euros. At left back, for example, Wijndal and Van Aanholt both didn't really impress at left back during the tournament. Right back, Dumfries was fantastic. I just don't know at the moment whether he's going to play this game with Van Gaal so intent on fitness. That will be something we'll have to see about. But left back could be an opportunity for Tyrell Malacia. He's the only recognised left back in the squad, unless you count Daley Blind. I suppose Van Gaal will go with experience. He'll go with Blind left back, where in the past he has had problems, but he's always really good on the ball. And a right back, Dumfries, would be my choice. People have been sending in some things about the game. Ilvan says that he's hoping for some Van Gaal magic.
Yeah. And
Kingetcher says Van Gaal said at the press conference he's happy with Bergwijn in the games. And he took the 4-3-3. So many questions. The Dutch media obsessed with the formation that the Dutch will play. Okay. And I don't know, because I think it's good to be flexible personally, but I'm not Dutch. I'm British. I've got a soft spot for the Dutch. And 5 at the back has worked for Van Gaal in the past. In the Euros, De Boer tried to make it work, but he hasn't got much of a footballing brain when it comes to management, so he couldn't get the best out of the system. And the 4-3-3 is going to stay because the players want to play in that formation.
But what's interesting is what sort of anchor and what sort of player do you use? Because Frankie de Jong has at times been used as a centre half at Barcelona, with the sort of liberty to bring the ball out of defence. It would be very interesting to see if you could have 2 centre halves and then Frankie de Jong playing almost as a libero type, sort of as a holding midfielder, but someone who will drop deep and pick up the ball and control the play. That would be something that I, as a neutral, would be excited to see.
He did a bit of that at Ajax too. He played at centre back in a 4, and he was picked on for some of his defensive frailties. But when he was like in the midfield and was allowed to drop behind the centre backs, there was some really good football played, because he can do so much from deep.
Exactly.
Teun Koopman is another one that's like that, who again I don't think we'll see come into the squad. Come into the starting 11, although he is in the squad again. We've had quite a lot of people sending in their starting 11s. I won't read through every single one. I'll just flash a few on screen. If you want to pause and have a look at them, you can. But a lot of the positions are the same. You've got Wijnaldum, of course, De Jong, but it's the fullbacks. It's the third position in midfield. It might be Martin de Roon to try and break up the play a bit more. But again, the Euros isn't great for him. And then you've got the right winger, who could be Bergwijn. I personally would like to see Cody Gakpo given a chance. He's really,
he looked very sharp, and I watched him in the Champions League qualifier. I thought he looked really, really sharp.
He is really good player. I think that this is his big season to nail it at PSV, get a good move. As for Netherlands, it's a different level again, and I haven't seen him too much at this level yet. He's always been a bit of a bench player just coming on because he hasn't had that many caps. It could be his chance in the right wing.
Yeah. I mean, thinking about what you guys could expect from us from Norway, I mean, the really big question is, well, one of the big questions, like I said, under normal circumstances, our coach would be very drawn to a 4-4-2 formation. But the question is if that's still true, because Alex Sørloth hasn't been involved with RB Leipzig. I mean, he's got his move now to Real Sociedad. Thankfully, he'll get to play some football, but he hasn't. I mean, there has to be some question marks over his match fitness, and starting two strikers, of which one might not be completely fit against the Dutch, is quite ambitious, you'd have to say. It's possible that it's that, and if he plays both of them, then I would expect to see again, frustratingly, Morten Thorsby in a sort of wide midfield role, which is not really what he does. But he runs a lot, so I guess he would be in charge of tracking your fullbacks or whatever. And,
if it's Dumfries and he plays like he did in the Euros.
Yeah, it could be something like this. And very interested to see with Sandaberg out, maybe Patrick Berg of Bodø Glimt, the sort of playmaker of the very exciting Bodø Glimt team in Norway, and next to my favorite Mathias Normann, that could be a thing. But also a positive for Norway is Jens Petter Hauge getting his move from Milan to Eintracht Frankfurt. He just wasn't getting enough game time in Italy with Milan, and he is an exciting winger, but he's someone I understand from what we're told is that there was some frustration at Milan in terms of, like, tactically he's a little bit of a free spirit, which coaches in Serie A aren't wild about, and I think in this slightly sort of more freewheeling Bundesliga, I think Jens Petter Hauge will have a much better time. Perhaps, I mean, he has scored for Frankfurt already, so maybe he'll have a role here. It'll be interesting to see.
Well, I was going to say with him, he was linked with the Eredivisie when he was making his breakthrough. And then, of course, he went further and impressed more in Europe and then went to Milan.
It was a very typical story. He impressed for Bodø Glimt against Milan. Now, Milan had been keeping an eye on him in the way that all big clubs keep an eye on everyone because they have so many scouts and analysts. You know, everyone knows who everyone are. Like, there are no secrets anymore. But he played really, really well against Milan. And apparently there were people from Milan who were actually in touch with his agent whilst the game was still going on. Sort of asking him what's the deal with this guy. And it's a tale as old as time. We see it a lot in football. A player from a smaller country, from a smaller club, does really well in Europe against the big team and gets bought immediately because it's fine having scouts and analysts and stuff, but there's really no substitute from having a complete sort of unknown playing really well in a game where all the directors are present and watching and this sort of thing. That does help grease the wheels in terms of transfers happening.
I'm going a little bit off topic now, but if people are still listening half an hour in, then they're obviously keen to hear about Dutch football stuff. Now, I was just going to say about transfers to the Eredivisie from Norway. And I heard recently that Haaland's rise has actually risen prices of Norwegian players, and therefore Dutch clubs are often priced out of moves now.
It's a funny one, but yeah, it's really irrational. But then the track, it can be kind of irrational. There's an element of fashions and fads involved here as well. And yeah, I'm sure it is possible that because of guys like Haaland, you know, Ødegaard, Sandaberg, these are the sort of names that you hear now. That Norwegian clubs can get away with pricing their players slightly higher, and then that would be a challenge. But I also wonder if I think there's also going to be from the Norwegian players an increasing awareness of the value of planning your career and taking a sort of middle step before you go to a very big league. Because you see that with most of them who've been successful, and Haaland's a great example. You know, he had offers from, I believe they've been very open. Like Juventus were very interested when he was leaving Norway to begin with, and there were some other big clubs involved. But they sent him to RB Salzburg because they felt Austria, okay, he's more likely going to get to play. You know, you see Sandaberg again go to Genk in Belgium and have enjoy himself there for a while. I think players will have seen it's very, very tough to go straight from Norway to one of the big leagues. So having a stop in a league like the Dutch where you'll get game time and where the coaching, you know, is a very good reputation at least. It's good for their career. So I still think Holland and Dutch teams will be a very attractive destination for Norwegian players still.
And it has been this summer too. A couple of actually went to Feyenoord, and one went from the Swedish league to RZ, who is also Norwegian. So again, this won't die. It will always be something that will happen. I think they'll just start looking in perhaps the second divisions and trying to find little cheap deals in there. But some great players nonetheless coming from Norway. Now, without further ado, go ahead.
I'm excited to see Ausnes playing for Feyenoord. That's going to be very exciting. I mean, he's he's not young, but he's someone who's been one of the best players in the Norwegian league for a long time, and I'm very excited to see him try his hand abroad. Sort of midfielder who's got a bit of everything. He's not a good ball player, but he's got a bit of he can hold his own in the physical battles as well. I think he should do well for you guys.
Let's touch upon Pedersen as well, because he's actually in the Norway squad and is a young player playing for Feyenoord. He's just signed. I've noticed an improvement from him already. I can see little things that he's done to his game already that have changed from when he first started for Feyenoord. He's growing in confidence and actually looks like someone they might be able to sell for big money in future.
I'm glad to hear. I mean, I haven't seen him played for Feyenoord, but I mean, this is the benefit of moving abroad. If you have the right mindset and you go into somewhere where the level is higher, then you have to raise your own level as well. Yeah. And it's and this is something that, because of Haaland and all these big names, I do occasionally now get asked by sort of foreign journalists who are writing articles about the sort of new wave of Norwegian players. And I mean, I don't think because of Erling Haaland there's going to be more talented Norwegian players than there were before, because that's not how it works. But what I do think is, because we've had a few sort of very visual successes that everyone have noticed, what will happen is that more young players will get chances abroad that maybe they wouldn't have. And they're not necessarily better or worse than they were, but foreign clubs are maybe more likely to take a chance on them. And once you have those chances, more of them are going to take it. Sometimes football, as much as we talk about youth development and this and that, sometimes football is just about being at the right club at the right time, and having a few good games and becoming confident and things sort of working out for you. So I think you will see more Norwegians at bigger clubs in Europe in the years to come. Not necessarily because we've cracked some secret code and we've found the holy grail of developing talent, just because the ones who have been very successful will have opened some doors for the rest of them.
Certainly right. To answer a few questions that have come in, the people have been asking about the goalkeeping position. It's one of the big changes for the Dutch right now. The three goalkeepers that have been called up are Tim Krul from Norwich, who for me is never going to be the first choice for the Netherlands now. He's just there as backup. The other two that have been called up, Justin Bijlo from Feyenoord, who actually wore the captain's armband very briefly the other day. He's doing very well at Feyenoord, signed a new contract, all going well for him. And Joel Drommel, the PSV goalkeeper, just signed from Twente. One of them is going to play. It might be that the two of them swap over at some point during the week. I think that I agree with this one. I think Bijlo is going to be in goal because of his mindset. I think Drummel's just got this bit of nervousness. He might make a mistake. Bijlo is confident. He will make a mistake if he goes gung-ho and goes for it. But that's the kind of thing that you need, that confidence, especially when playing for the national team in a game such as this. So I think with Bijlo in goal, I think that it will be Blind at left back, as Van Gaal just does a bit of safe hands. He does like Daley Blind as well. He's served him well over the years. And I think the winger position, if it's a 4-3-3, it's either going to go to Gakpo or Bergwijn. Bergwijn hasn't played in a while, though. I just wonder if Van Gaal's going to have a word with the player that plays in the right wing, saying, this is your chance, this is your position. If you take it, this is the game to do so. Let's see what Van Gaal can come up with anyway.
Well, I think Daley Blind at fullback makes a lot of sense specifically against Norway, and I speak that as a Norwegian, because I think you will have a lot of possession. So I think having a player like him who's so good on the ball, so tidy with his passing, and I think if you're concerned, I mean, if you're playing a team who had really strong wingers, then maybe you're a little bit worried about him one-on-one defensively, though I think he's underrated in that aspect, to be honest.
Do you think?
But
I think the pace.
I think well, yeah, but I think he does. I think people sort of write him off as just a holding midfielder who's constantly played out of position. I think he's actually not a bad defender. But the point I'm saying is, you might see a Norwegian team who plays without wingers. Totally. I mean, there's a good chance we might line up with no wingers here. we have previous for this, so that might not be a worry at all for you guys.
And more excellent news for the Dutch fans, of course, who are now licking their lips, thinking we've got a great chance here.
I'm expecting you to win. I am, you guys, and that's not just me being pessimistic. It's just because I think there is a great national team there with this generation of players. I think it's possible to find a great national team, but I don't think we've found it yet. I don't think we've found the formation that suits everyone. I don't think we've found the combinations of players that go well together yet. I think it's like a puzzle that hasn't been completed yet by the coach. And I like the coach, and I hope and I think he's, of all the Norwegian coaches we could hire, I think he's the one who's got the best chance at unlocking this puzzle. But I'm not quite sure he has the answer just yet.
The aim, of course, for Norway will be to finish in the top two, won't it? And if they can get over Turkey to do that, then great. Although Turkey have got a bit of an advantage already now, having beaten the Dutch already.
Yeah, and having beaten us, and they were quite a lot better than us in that game, so that was quite dispiriting.
Turkey's a good team, although with the Euros they weren't a good team. So it's just, I don't know how to put it, but when they play the Dutch, I think the Dutch are just that bad. Yeah. That Turkey were made to look good, although several Turkish fans made me feel as though it was the other way around, although I do think the Netherlands were awful.
But I just think that, without getting back into the scandal of the worst dark horses there ever were, I just think they were just unreliable in the sense, because they had some great results, and then suddenly, like, did they play 3-3 against Latvia or something weird like that? I mean, they do have these sort of bizarre results. Like, what are you doing? But this is off screen. The dog is really kicking off.
You're really sweet. Well, I was going to ask you about how the Netherlands can beat the Norwegians, but I suppose you've kind of already answered that question, Lars, and you've given several twos and throws about how the Dutch should get in amongst this formation.
Yeah, my big concern is that my biggest concern is actually just individual players defensively will come up against a quality of opponent in guys like Malen, in guys like Depay, that it's maybe paradoxically, I'm sure if you're watching this and you're maybe like a casual, if you're watching this, you're probably not a casual football fan, actually. But if you're God bless you guys. But if you're watching this, I'm guessing it's fair that you might associate Norway with like sort of Henning Berg and Brede Hangeland and sort of big, strong center halves who will win the headers and kick the ball far away. Like, that is an area of the field we're just not very strong in at the moment. And again, we have names going forward that look very scary on paper, Haaland in particular. And as good as he has been, and he's been good in flashes for the national team as well, he has looked like he's just not quite on the same frequency as the rest of the players in the national team just yet. So I think you're playing this Norwegian team at quite a good time. I think maybe a year from now, 18 months from now, going forward, I think there is a potentially very, very good team here, especially if we can find a new center half somewhere. But potentially this is a generation I think can do well, and I think will reach a tournament, and I think will, have their moment in the sun. But I don't think we're there yet. So I think for this international break, I think you're facing us at quite a good time for you guys, and I'm expecting you to win.
Excellent news. What is your score prediction then, Lars?
Sadly, I think. Well, actually, let's say 3-1. I think it'll be a comfortable win for you guys, but I think we can sneak a goal from somewhere.
I'm tempted to go for a draw, although I was leaning towards a defeat before. I think it's early days for Van Gaal, and if it gets a bad result, it could get very ugly very quickly. I'm thinking it'll be 1-1 or 2-1 for Netherlands. I'm going to be pessimistic and say 1-1, so that when they win, I'll happily have egg on my face, very happily.
Well, we should do this again if we do.
More to come from Football-Oranje very soon, everybody. If you're watching this and enjoying the Netherlands content, we've got live streams after each of the games coming up in this next week. But do join us for those straight after full-time whistle. And if you have been enjoying the Football-Oranje stuff, whether that's our podcast, whether that's our club content stuff for the Eredivisie, we've been nominated, thanks to yourselves, by the way, we've been nominated for 2 separate awards at the Football Content Awards. If you'd like to vote for us in the final, I've left a link in the description. It's right at the top, and I've let you know which categories to vote for us in, if you'd like to, of course. But I imagine if you're enjoying the Football-Oranje podcast, you'll want to vote for us. We're going for 2 awards. If you can help us along with that, please do vote once we finish this stream. But Lars, thank you very much for doing this.
Oh, nice chatting to you.
It's been good fun.
And maybe I'm lulling you all into a false sense of security. Maybe we'll be fantastic, but we'll see. I suspect we're heading for a Dutch win. Well, you should have me on, and I can explain why I was wrong if it goes in any other direction.
You will have definitely fooled lots and lots of English-speaking Dutch football fans if that is the case. Lars, thank you very much, and I'll speak to you very soon.
Yep, bye.